There's a specific kind of burnout that never announces itself. It doesn't arrive as missed deadlines, visible distress, or an obvious collapse. It arrives as a version of you that keeps doing everything right and feels nothing while doing it. You show up. You deliver. You are, by most external measures, completely fine. And yet something essential has gone very quiet inside. Functional but empty. Still producing. Still being the reliable one. Still moving through the days. And increasingly unsure what's underneath all of it. There is actually a name for that. And the 7 signs that define it are probably things you've been explaining away for a while. Not because you were in denial, but because these signs don't look the way burnout is supposed to look. They look like stress. They look like a difficult season. They look like you managing. This video is going to name all 7, specifically enough that you'll recognize them, not just understand them. By the end, you'll have something more useful than another checklist. A name for the exact experience you've been carrying without language for it. Most burnout content starts from the assumption that burnout is visible, that it announces itself through missed work, obvious distress, a collapse, the people around you can see. And for some people, that's true, but there's a version that looks nothing like that. It's the version where the person keeps functioning, keeps delivering, keeps showing up, keeps being the reliable one, while something very different is happening inside. The reason this version is so hard to catch isn't that the signs are subtle. It's that the signs get absorbed into the performing. Each one has a ready explanation. Each one gets filed under something else. Stress. A difficult phase. A personality trait. I just need a vacation. Sign 1. You finish something that used to matter. A project, a presentation, something you worked hard on, and you feel nothing. Not disappointment, not relief, not even a small flicker of satisfaction. Just emptiness where the reward used to be. You remember a version of yourself who would have felt something at this moment. That version feels like someone else now. The clinical name for this is anhedonia, the specific diminishment of pleasure from things that previously generated it. But inside, it doesn't feel clinical. It feels like something switched off somewhere along the way. And because you're still producing, still meeting the standard, it's easy to miss that the signal has gone quiet. Sign 2 is the one that surprises people most when they finally hear it named. Rest makes you feel worse, not just unproductive. Actually worse. The guilt that arrives the moment you stop moving doesn't lift. It floods in. You take a Saturday with nothing required, and instead of recovering, you spiral. The anxiety of stillness turns out to be harder to tolerate than the anxiety of the work. You might have opened the laptop anyway, just to make the feeling stop. Or you sat there, guilty about sitting there, waiting for the permission to rest that never fully came. This isn't weakness. This is a nervous system that has learned, from a lot of evidence, that stillness isn't safe yet. That's a different problem than needing more rest, and it has a different explanation. Signs 1 and 2 aren't random. They're connected by something happening underneath the experience. When the nervous system has been running a sustained stress response for months, sometimes years, it doesn't simply reset when the external pressure pauses. The alarm doesn't turn off just because the workday ended. It keeps running. And stillness, without the distraction of the work, just makes the alarm louder. Research on chronic stress consistently shows that prolonged activation of the body's stress systems doesn't resolve in a single weekend. The nervous system doesn't receive the signal that it's safe to stop because it hasn't accumulated enough safety cues to override the pattern yet. That's not a character flaw. That's a physiological pattern. And physiological patterns, unlike character flaws, can actually be changed. Sign 3, the irritability that only shows up at home. At work, you're controlled. Professional. The performance energy is still available, but by the time you arrive somewhere, no one is evaluating you. By the time you're with the people who were supposed to be the easy part, the tank is empty, and the people closest to you receive the version of you running on nothing. Short answers, low patience. Physically present but somewhere else entirely. This is one of the most invisible costs of what's being described here. Not the work performance that holds, that's what you've been protecting, but the relational presence. The warmth. The ability to just be in a room with someone you love without it costing something. That's what gets rationed when everything available has already gone to the performing. And because the work holds, this one gets filed under, I've just been really busy. Sign 4. The loss of genuine interest in the things you chose. Not work. Things outside it. The hobbies that used to restore you. The plans you used to actually look forward to. They still happen, you still show up to them. But you're going through motions now. Everything has the same low-grade texture of effort. Even the things that were supposed to be the antidote. This isn't clinical depression, though it can look similar from the outside. It's the specific flattening that happens when the nervous system has been in survival mode long enough that the signal for genuine interest has gone dim. Not gone, dim. The difference matters. Sign 5. The physical things nobody ever connected to the work. Jaw tension that you only notice when you consciously try to release it. Low-grade headaches that arrive on Sunday afternoons, reliably. Getting sick more often than you used to. The 3-day cold that appears exactly when you finally take time off. Shallow breathing you only noticed when someone pointed it out. The body has been running on alert for so long that the physical signs of chronic activation have simply become the background of your daily experience. You stopped noticing them because they've always been there. That's not normal. That's the adaptation. Signs 1 through 5 eventually become recognizable once you have the frame to see them. But signs 6 and 7 are different. These are the ones you've touched briefly, late at night, in a quiet moment, and then quickly moved away from, because they're harder to explain and harder to sit with. Sign 6. Watching yourself from a slight distance. A persistent sense of moving through your own life on mild autopilot. You're in the room. You're having the conversation. You're at the dinner, the meeting, the event. But you're not quite in it. There's a layer between you and the experience you're technically inside. It's not dramatic. It's not dissociation in any clinical sense. It's more like a persistent half-presence, going through your own life as a very competent participant who has stopped actually arriving. Conversations you're half-having. Moments you're technically in but not really touching. You know you were there, you just don't know where you were. Sign 7 is the subtlest of all. And for many people, the one that lands hardest. The future stopped pulling. Not dark, not collapsed into dread, just flat. The plans that used to generate something, anticipation, a reason to get through the week, now feel like more weight instead of more reward. Nothing on the horizon pulls the way it used to. Everything is manageable, nothing is wanted. And because you can still write the plan, still set the goal, still maintain the appearance of forward motion, this one gets explained away as I just need something new to look forward to. Here is what all 7 of these signs share. They don't look like burnout because they look like you coping. They look like you managing. Like the kind of person who handles things, holds things together, keeps it all moving. And that appearance of competence, of continuity, of being fine, is not proof that you're fine. It is the sign. The functioning was never the counter-argument. It was always part of the pattern. High functioning doesn't mean fine. It means the system is still running, even after the person inside it stopped feeling like themselves. And if any part of what's been named here describes your last few months, or your last few years, you are not imagining this. You are carrying something that has a name. For anyone who recognized themselves in more than 2 or 3 of these signs, there's a resource in the description built specifically for this. It goes deeper than a symptom list. It's called the High Functioning Burnout Field Guide, and it describes this exact version, the one that keeps performing while it's happening with the same precision, and then takes you through what's actually available from here. Not a system that assumes you can just stop. A guide built for people who can't just stop, and who need something designed for that reality. If you want to take what's been named here a little further, the link is waiting in the description. Here's something we're saying clearly. Having a name for this doesn't fix anything immediately. The jaw tension doesn't resolve the moment you recognize sign 5. The flat future doesn't become vivid the instant you acknowledge sign 7. That's not what naming does. What naming does is remove the moral charge. Right now, every one of these signs probably carries a private verdict, a conclusion about what it says about you. I'm not resilient enough. I've lost my drive. Something is fundamentally wrong with me. The naming doesn't erase the experience, it removes the verdict. And that matters more than it might sound. Because what makes this specific kind of collapse so hard to recover from isn't the exhaustion itself. It's the layer on top, the shame layer, the I should be further along by now layer, the I've tried things and they didn't hold so maybe this is just who I am now layer. That layer is heavier than the tiredness. Precise naming, this is what this is naming, is what starts to thin it. There's also the objection most people carry into something like this: I'm not bad enough to qualify. Real burnout is for people who couldn't get out of bed, people who missed work, people whose lives visibly fell apart, not people who are still meeting their deadlines, keeping their commitments, being the reliable one. That logic has a shape to it. It just has the causality backwards. The reason you're still functioning isn't proof that this isn't real. It's evidence of how long you've been running on override and what that has cost. You don't need a worse story to have a legitimate claim on what's been described here. You don't need a more visible collapse. You don't need a more dramatic bottom. Showing up, still delivering, and feeling hollowed out is enough. That is the specific kind of tired this exists to name. So here is the one thing available today. Not a system, not a recovery plan. One honest acknowledgement. Find 2 minutes, privately, with no audience, and let yourself say, "This is real." Not out loud if that's too much. Just internally, where the self-dismissal usually lives. I am not imagining this. That's it. That's the step, not because it solves anything. Because it stops the energy drain of constantly arguing against your own experience. If this video opens something you want to take further, the High-Functioning Burnout Field Guide in the description was built exactly for that. The resource designed for the version of burnout that keeps going. Link in the description and in the pinned comment. Which of these 7 surprised you most? The one you were least expecting to recognize in yourself? There's a particular kind of loneliness in what this video described. Not the loneliness of having no one around. The loneliness of performing fine in every room while something entirely different is happening underneath. The people closest to you see you functioning. The colleagues see you delivering. And somewhere in the gap between those external data points and your actual interior experience, there's been this quiet, persistent question. Why can't I just be okay? This video is an answer to that question. Not a complete one, but a real one. You weren't able to rest because your nervous system hasn't received enough safety signals to stop running the threat response yet. You weren't able to feel things because you've been in output mode long enough that the receiving channel has gone dim. Not off dim. You weren't broken. You were running a system that was never designed to be sustainable. And the fact that you kept it running so well for so long, so invisibly, that is not evidence against your experience. It is the clearest evidence of how real it has been. The 7 signs in this video aren't a checklist. They're a mirror. And if any of them landed with that quiet, yes, that's it. Something has already shifted. Not the tiredness, not the flatness. The verdict. You are allowed to let the name land. You are allowed to stop explaining it away. You are allowed to say, this has been real, this has been a while, and I don't have to have a plan right now. The plan comes later. The permission comes first. You didn't choose to run until there was nothing left. Nobody told you, when you were young and ambitious and building, that the reward for delivering is always more to deliver. That the cost of being the reliable one is that you become the one people rely on. Indefinitely, invisibly, until there is nothing left. Nobody said, careful. This system is designed to take everything you give it and ask for more. You were not weak, not dramatic, not failing. You were a person running a performance so sustained, so consistent, so invisible in its cost that even you couldn't see what it was doing. You can see it now. Not yet is a complete sentence. One small thing. No audience, you are allowed.